and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we have a plant care video for Ficus Audrey, and the botanical name is Ficus benghalensis. And this is actually, which is very cool, you can grow this indoors, but it is also recognized as the national tree of India. And it's commonly known as the banyan tree. So in the wild, banyan trees grow long aerial roots that reach from the canopy of the tree all the way to the ground, and they become trunks. So that's where you see those gnarled, really cool trunks on the banyan trees. And it also means that the plants can grow very wide. So those aerial roots, they will reach out, and that they can even become wider than the tree itself, and the trees can get 100 feet tall. So some mature banyan trees actually stretch over acres, which is really, really cool. Now, it's not going to happen to you indoors to you, because you'll be growing your Ficus Audrey in a container, but it's just a very cool thing to know about this plant. Now, in terms of indoors, how big will the Ficus Audrey get for you? It's a moderate grower, so it's going to grow at a moderate rate. It will generally top out around 10 feet tall, 3 feet wide, but that's after several years of growing. It's the size is also going to be dependent on its growing conditions and the environment in your home and that sort of thing, and whether you prune. So that's something to keep in mind, that you can keep it to within a certain size, and that it's going to take quite a while to grow. As you can see, this is probably like we would call it a juvenile age here. It's not a very young plant, but it's maybe approaching, it's a tween in its tween years. So an interesting thing to keep in mind here, very helpful thing to keep in mind, is if you've tried to grow this plant's relative, the fiddle leaf fig, and had some problems, it's good to know that Ficus Audrey is easier to grow than the fiddle leaf fig. And as you can see, it's a very attractive plant as well. It is different from the fiddle leaf fig in that it does have smaller leaves that are slightly fuzzy, whereas the fiddle leaf figs are smoother and a little bit shinier. These leaves are also more oblong than the fiddle leaf fig, and the trunk is a little bit lighter color. Okay, so how to keep these beauties healthy and happy in your indoor garden. The first thing to consider is lighting. You need to choose a location that receives several hours of bright indirect light a day for your Ficus Audrey. So that could be in a south or west facing window. And it can also do well in an eastern facing window with morning sun. So one thing to keep in mind, however, about the lighting for this plant is that you don't want it to get too close to bright light, so such as in a west or south facing window, right in the window, if there's no shades or anything outside to shade some. You don't want to get it too close, because it will get sunburned foliage fairly easily. That will show up usually at first like a bleached out area, and then it will become brown until you'll get these big brown holes in the leaves. And I have a video on what to do if you've sunburned your plant. I will put a link below for any videos I mention in this video, as well as for that one. And I do have timestamps below, so if you want to skip ahead to humidity, temperature, etc., you can do that. Okay, so the lighting, as mentioned, bright, but let's not sunburn the plant. They also do well with full spectrum lighting if you have a fairly dim growing conditions in your home. Watering for the Ficus Audrey. It does best in consistently moist soil, like the ficus, like its cousin, the fiddle leaf fig. So you don't want to let this plant go completely dry, because that is going to cause it to drop leaves. So allow the first 2-3 inches of soil to dry or get drier between waterings, and then water it thoroughly. On the moisture meter, water when it hits the 4 before it hits the 3, which is dry. If you do experience the plant dropping leaves or yellowing leaves, those are indications of under or over watering. So look at your watering, make sure you're watering correctly. If you're losing leaves to dropping and yellowing leaves will eventually drop as well. So if you just consistently water on a consistent basis when the plant needs it, before it's very dried out, you should be fine with this plant. Okay, so humidity. The plant, as mentioned, is native to India. It does like warm, humid conditions. 45% plus in terms of humidity is the best thing for the plant indoors. If it goes much below that, you will have some problems with some leaf edges getting browned, and even the tip of the leaf getting browned. And you could, if it's very, very low humidity, you could also lose leaves, because that's going to be drying out the whole plant. When the leaves lose a lot of moisture like that, it does affect the plant in terms of drying the whole plant out. The problem, however, is that the soil may be still moist and not ready to be planted, but then the leaves are drying out. So this low humidity can cause problems if it's very low. So if it's very low, and even if it's somewhat low, I would suggest using various means of keeping the plant, the air around the plant humid, or more humid than the rest of your house. Some ways to do that is misting on a regular basis throughout the day, also putting the plant over a humidity tray, and grouping plants. The more plants you have grouped together, the more humid the air in that area will be, because plants transpire. When they transpire, they emit water vapor into the air, and that water vapor will humidify whatever is around them. So if you put 2 ficus next to each other, a Ficus Audrey and then maybe a fiddle leaf fig, then they will humidify each other. So the more plants, the better in terms of keeping the humidity up. You can check the humidity in your plant, where you keep your plants, in your plant room, where you keep all your plants and that sort of thing, and see if and you will find generally, if you have a lot of plants, that it's going to be more humid than other areas of your home where you don't have plants. So use the hygrometer to check on the humidity levels. As well, you can, if it's very dry, as we were talking about a little while ago, when it's really, really dry, you can also use a humidifier to get the plants through. Maybe you have a drier time of year, use the humidifier during that time to keep the plants moisture. Okay, and there are various areas of the home. The bathroom tends to be a little moist. Sometimes your laundry room could be a little moister than the other areas. However, you have to make sure that you, in those areas, you have good lighting for the plant as well. Another thing to keep in mind is to keep these plants away from drafty windows, doors that are opening a lot, and air conditioning and heating vents, the forced air heating and air conditioning vents, because that will dry out the air around the plants as well. So temperature is the next thing, and temperature was something you're going to also find on your hygrometer, because hygrometers have temperature and humidity. So you can also check the temperature in your home with the hygrometer or with a temperature gauge. This plant does the best from 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're in that range, it will generally be fine in terms of temperature. If you go much lower than 65, it's going to get a little unhappy because remember, it is from a warm climate. So if that's the case, try to find a warmer area of the home, maybe in the winter time where you have it. In the summertime, it gets a lot cooler. So in that case, move the plant around till you find a good temperature range of 65 to 85 degrees. Okay, fertilizing this beautiful plant. So the Ficus Audrey appreciates regular fertilizing during its active growing period. You want to fertilize about once a month in the early spring, starting in the early spring until the early fall. You can also add extra goodies to this plant. Will really enjoy things like worm castings and alfalfa meal, which is a natural growth hormone, and I do have a video on alfalfa meal, and I have videos on worm castings as well. It's also good to mulch this plant, and I have a video on the benefits of mulching this plant, and that will retain moisture in the soil, and it will also cause the soil to be even healthier for you because it's protected by the mulch, and the mulch breaks down and continues to add nutrients to the soil. Always use organic fertilizers when you are fertilizing any of your houseplants, this plant included. You want to look for a low NPK, so something like a 555, 433, 423, something along those lines, so lower than 10, 10, 10. Because the chemical fertilizers, which are 10 and up, tend to be a lot harsher, and they will create fertilizer burn in your plant. That can create browning leaf tips and brown leaf edges. It can also cause root dieback. So you want to be very careful about that. And next, we are going to talk about pruning this lovely plant. So as mentioned, since it can grow up to 10 feet tall indoors, it is often necessary to prune it to keep it a little bit shorter. I do have a pruning playlist. I'll put a link below to give you some ideas of where to cut on plants, and I'm constantly adding to that playlist as well. So in addition to pruning to control size, you want it to encourage the tree to branch more for you. So that will make it more aesthetically pleasing, and it'll just be a stronger plant as well when you do that. It's best to prune in spring and summer when the plant's actively growing. Or you could also do late winter before it starts active growth. When you do prune it, do make sure to protect any surfaces because it does have a latex that comes out when you prune it that can stain surfaces. This is the same for all of the ficus, so be careful about that. And that latexy, it's a white latex that will drip from where you cut. It also can be irritating to some people's skin. Now, you don't need to be pruning this plant a lot, however. Just prune it when you really need to. And when you do prune it, don't prune more than 1/3 of the plant off at any one pruning. If you do that, you can shock the plant, which can actually kill the plant. So just 1/3 at the most, 1/4 to 1/3 of the plant at a time. Wait a few months in between as well. The next thing is repotting. This plant, Ficus Audrey, doesn't really require a lot of repotting. It will do well in the same container for 2 to 3 years because, as I mentioned, it's a moderate grower. It's not a real quick grower, even though it does eventually get big. And this plant doesn't mind being a bit root bound either. And I have a video on root bound explaining that. And so it can do well for a while. So even at the point where you think I really have to repot that, you can go a few months and the plant will still be okay. What you want to look for when it is time to repot is, one of the biggies is roots coming out of the drainage hole. That will tell you that it's time to repot Ficus Audrey. You want to use a well-draining yet moisture retentive soil, so something with some pumice and perlite for drainage, or pumice or perlite for drainage, and peat moss or coir for the water retention and nutrient retention ability. And I'll put a link below for some soils, as well as a link to a video I recently did on how to make your own really healthy houseplant soil for your houseplants, and the Ficus Audrey really enjoys that too. Okay, so pests. Ficus Audrey is prone to some sap-sucking pests, and they will create sticky substance on nearby furniture, the floor, the leaves of the plant in nearby plants. So then if you have that happening, you will know that you do have a sapsucker, such as mealybugs or scale. So if that happens, if you get mealybugs or scale on these plants, you want to use neem oil to get them under control, and rinse and do it again, and rinse and do it again. You want to do it about 4 times every week, and that should get it under control. And then do keep a really good eye on it, and just keep a good eye on them in general, because if you can catch a pest infestation before it becomes a real big infestation, you'll be a lot better off. Another thing to keep in mind with these leaves, just like its relative, the fiddle leaf fig, the leaves, because they're big, they tend to catch a lot of dust, so they will get dusty and dirty. So keep them cleaned. Clean them with something soft, like a microfiber cloth, which has been dampened with water. Avoid leaf shine products. I have a video on why you want to avoid them. One reason is the plant isn't able to photosynthesize as well as it should. And when these plants photosynthesize, they obviously grow bigger and healthier, and also it will prevent them from breathing and that vaporizing, creating that vapor I told you about for humidity, and even cleaning the air as well. So it prevents a lot of things. So just wipe them off gently with a microfiber, something soft, to get them nice and clean so that they can breathe and stay healthy and keep your air healthy. And that is it for this beautiful plant. How to grow it and have a really healthy Ficus Audrey in your indoor garden. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.